Hello and welcome back to our podcast, Fully Alive. In our last episode, we began to explore what it means to be broken. We said that what it means to be broken is to be fragmented within yourself. Today, we want to explore the next half of what it means to be broken. But I want to ask you a question. What does it mean to be human? And I think this is the age-old question that many people are wrestling with. But that is the point of this entire podcast, is that over the next several months, we will begin to have conversations around what it means to be human. But the one thing I can tell you for sure is that part of what it means to be human is that we know that every human being has inherent value, inherent dignity, and inherent worth. That's part of what it means to be human. And the reason why we know that is because there's always an outrage or a cry when someone is murdered, when someone is victimized, when there is racism that goes on, because we know that there is inherent dignity, value, and worth in every human being. And so when that is taken away from us, we feel it, we sense it, and we want justice. And so there's inherent worth, value, and dignity in every human being. So when we are stripped of our humanity, we know it, we feel it, we can sense it, we feel that something is missing, we know that we are less and less human. So many of us grow up in homes where we have been belittled by our parents, where we've not been noticed by our parents, when we as children are living separate lives from our parents. And as little babies or little children growing up, when our cry of anguish does not reach the ears of our parents, and they don't notice us, and they don't comfort us, and they don't love us, we feel like we are not noticed. We feel like there is something missing. We feel like that inherent dignity and value and worth as a human being is lost. And so what we do is we end up experiencing the world as a place that is not safe, because no one notices us. No one notices us in the midst of our pain. And that's how we develop anxiety, because we get anxious. We start asking questions such as, am I safe in this world? Am I capable of being loved by anyone? Am I worth love from anyone? And these are some of the questions we wrestle with as human beings. And so what happens is, when we are ignored by our parents, or when we're ignored by people, a deep sense of rejection and a deep sense of abandonment sets into our souls. And over time, over a series of events or circumstances, the more we are rejected, the more we are abandoned, what happens is the painful feeling of unworthiness and insignificance seeps deep into our core, and that becomes part of our human experience. And so we grow up as people who are longing for significance, longing for people to notice us, and we do all kinds of things for people to notice us, because we know that somehow a large part of our humanity has been stripped away from us, because we never grew up in a safe space. We never grew up loved and affirmed and being valued for who we are as human beings. So you may not have necessarily grown up in a abusive home, for example, but all of us experience that sense of abandonment and rejection in our lives. I'll never forget grade one of my schooling career. It was probably the worst year of my childhood days, because I went into this school and I could never ever make any friends. For some reason, no one wanted to play with me. And so I have vivid memories of lunch break where I would open my lunchbox and sit there on my own in the corner and eat the lunch that my mom had made for me, and just watch everyone else playing, watch everyone else having a good time. When I look back at my life, that was my first experience of abandonment and rejection. And what that did to me was that it showed me that I'm not valuable enough for people to like me. I'm not a person of worth for people to actually receive me as a friend. So that was my first experience of rejection and abandonment. I wonder what your first experience of rejection and abandonment was. You see, most of us have gone through so much trauma in our lives. And basically, trauma is um, an event or a series of events that cause physical and emotional harm to us. But when the event is over, when the trauma is over, the harm that it's caused to us on the inside remains. And so it affects our physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental well being. That's what trauma is. And so there's three various kinds of trauma. The first kind of trauma is acute trauma. So it's instances where you may suffer from a really bad car accident, or you've been diagnosed with a serious health condition, or you have suffered a form of abuse from someone, be it emotional and physical abuse, where you've been violated as a human being. These are acute forms of trauma. But there's also chronic forms of trauma where people consistently experience trauma again and again and again. So, for example, systemic prejudice and racism is a form of trauma that many people suffer over and over again. Take our beloved South Africa, for example, where a group of people are told that they are not good enough to hang out with the other group of people. And so they're told to keep their distance. They're told that you stay over there and we'll stay over here. But that causes a sense of deep rejection in those people who are told to stay away, because how they interpret that is that we don't have much value and worth and dignity as human beings, and therefore we're not even worth being with you and not worth living with you. That is chronic trauma, and that causes a deep sense of pain in people's hearts, because they interpret that as, well, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, and that seeps deep into our psyche. And so a sense of who you are as a human being is robbed, is taken away from you. That's chronic trauma. Then there's also vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, where people like first responders who suffer, rather who attend accident scenes, they tend to pick up trauma from others. Or if you're a counselor who continuously counsels people who have been traumatized, they also tend to pick up that trauma. The reason why I'm mentioning these examples is that every single one of us have experienced rejection and abandonment in some form or the other. Every single one of us has experienced trauma in one way or the other. And what that does is you start to withdraw from people. You start to withdraw within yourself. And so you're not able to have healthy, vibrant, dynamic, life giving relationships with others. And so either you indulge in a lot of self pity, you start feeling sorry for yourself, you adopt a woe is me attitude, or you start to create an alternate persona, a kind of personality that you think others will like. And so you create this alternate persona, and that's a persona you portray to others. But what happens increasingly over time is that there is a distance between the person that you create for others to like and who you really are. And so over time, you become more and more alienated from yourself. You're more and more disconnected from who you really are. And so this is part of what it means to be broken as well. And so the journey to wholeness is that you're able to regain your sense of value and dignity and worth as a human being, as someone who is created in the image of God. And so when you begin to start to have a healthy view of yourself, you also begin to start to have a healthy view of others as well. You're able to see others in the same way you see yourself. You're also able to see others for who God created them to be. You're able to start seeing the dignity and the value and the worth in other human beings. That means that you start to become more and more caring. It means you start to become more and more compassionate for others, because you really see them as people who have suffered rejection and abandonment, who have suffered trauma in their lives. And so you start to see people not through the lens of their behavior, but through the lens of what they have been through growing up. And so the journey from brokenness to wholeness does not happen automatically. It is a choice that we all have to make. See, we can't choose to change our behavior, but we can choose to get help. We can choose to listen. We can choose to begin to open ourselves up to the world and to other people and to community, and begin to have helpful conversations. We can choose to receive good counsel. I was chatting to a friend of mine on WhatsApp recently, and he was just explaining to me some of the frustrations that he had been through with other people. And I said to him, yeah, it doesn't make a difference whether you're a Christian or you're not, because if you are broken, even some of those things that you must experience as a Christian, you will never experience it in its full entirety, in the way God meant for you to experience. Because this person said to me, look, if you are a Christian, you've become a Christian, Jesus Christ makes you whole. And I said to him, no, actually, that's not how it works. Because when you become a Christian, you surrender your life to Jesus, you're not automatically made whole. Being made whole is a journey, is a process that we all go through if we choose that journey, if we choose that process. Because otherwise, the very life of God that He places in you will never manifest, will not come out of you fully if you choose to remain broken. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received from someone is this, is that we must live lives of intention and not obligation. See, so many of us live lives of obligation. We live lives as victims. Yes, things have happened to us in the past, but we can live lives of intention, choosing to get the help that we need so that we can move on from our brokenness to wholeness. There's nothing more sad and more tragic in the world than people who keep hurting others because they refuse to address their own brokenness. And so they keep living from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, and keep hurting people because they themselves are hurt. But they refuse to admit their hurt. They refuse to admit their pain, and they refuse to get help. And so brokenness is passed on from one person to the next, from one generation to the next. And we end up in a world that is so messed up, that is so broken. We end up with people who are pessimistic, who are cynical, who have lost their faith in humanity. I was speaking to someone the other day who's been so hurt by past rejection and abandonment that they said they don't trust anyone anymore because people keep letting them down. And in a way, I don't blame them, but I encourage them, go and get some help. Talk to a counselor, talk to a psychologist, talk to at least one person that you can vaguely trust. Because what you do is you're opening yourself up, and your pain starts to come out, and so you're no longer defined by what's happened to you in the past. All of us are going to get to that point where we will die. And one day there will be a funeral for all of us. And I don't want to be that person where people have to read eulogies that are forced. The kind of eulogies where you're forced to say nice things about the person, but you know that they weren't really that great, and you know that their lives actually left a trail of dead bodies, a trail of people who have been hurt by their actions. What I would like for people to read in my eulogy is, that was a compassionate man. That was a man who saw and understood me. That was a man who was willing to walk with me and to journey with me, even in the midst of my pain. That was a man who really was the aroma of God, the aroma of Christ in my life. And he was willing to stick with me through thick and thin. That's the kind of eulogy like I want people to read at my funeral, because I know that that's how God has been with me. I know that's how Jesus has been with me. I want to say once again that you're not defined by your past. Your past does not have to determine your future. Yes, things have happened to you in the past that have hurt you, that have left you down and out. But you have the choice to rise above the pain. You have the choice to get help so that you can become a whole person again. And I hope that you will continue watching this podcast, because I'm hoping to offer you content that'll help you start thinking about your life, that'll help you start thinking about the legacy that you want to leave in the future, that'll help you leave your mark, a good mark, with those who you leave behind one day when you pass on, when you leave this earth. Thank you for watching. I hope this has made you think a little bit, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. Cheers.